Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maurer Grotner Plummer Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Maurer Grotner Plummer Attorneys, understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis, on the web at lawngp.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson, attorneys at law since 1949, utilizing experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. The Indiana University Board of Trustees met Thursday for the first time with 3 of Governor Mike Braun's new picks. The board also froze tuition for in-state undergrads and updated its expressive activity policy.
It is appropriate to grieve what is changing in how we have understood how our voice is valued, recognizing that something has been lost.
A Greensburg woman wrongly convicted of killing her child has helped found the Indiana Innocence Project.
There are people out there that are begging for help, and we need to be able to help them.
The project is tapping resources at the Maurer School of Law and IU's criminology department. And we look at how the city is trying to make downtown housing more affordable. We'll have these stories and more right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Indiana University is slashing $100 million from its budget, codifying sweeping restrictions on tenure, freezing in-state tuition, and reforming the unpopular expressive activity policy. Those were all approved during Thursday's first meeting of the Board of Trustees without any elected members. And as Ethan Sandwise reports, the board also awarded President Pamela Whitten a $225,000 bonus.
Less than 2 months ago, the state passed significant changes to higher education, cutting appropriations for IU by $60 million, eliminating academic programs with low enrollment, and reducing the influence of faculty government, to name just a few.
We're confident we've got a very good relationship, I should say, with the governor's administration and with legislators of both political parties.
But it also gave Governor Mike Braun the power to remove alumni-elected trustees and replace them before the end of their term, a power he exercised just last week. Thursday was the first meeting for conservative attorney James Bopp Jr.
I, James Bopp Jr. Thank you.
Former ESPN anchor Sage Steele.
Do solemnly swear.
And Indianapolis lawyer Brian Eagle.
And I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Now that we have you, we're going to put you to work.
Despite its long agenda, the board discussed little about the items it approved. None of the details were released before the meeting. The board usually rubber stamps its way through meetings, but veteran trustees seemed surprised when they received pushback from one of its newest members.
The proposals that came to the trustees should be made public so that people can look at them, comment, be engaged, and then we would have a committee system that would consider those.
The board unanimously amended the expressive activity policy to remove a ban on expressive activity between 11 at night and 6 in the morning, which it's already blocked from enforcing by a court order. Many of the new policies followed intense criticism by Republican politicians. Some, such as tying faculty employment to productivity standards, apply to all universities. Others target IU specifically, like a new rule forbidding faculty councils from creating policies.
It is appropriate to grieve what is changing in how we have understood how our voice is valued, recognizing that something has been lost.
As to how the university plans to cut $100 million from the budget while freezing tuition, little more came out Thursday than what the university had already announced.
We are requesting the approval for an amendment to the plan document of a reduction to the retirement employer contribution by 1%.
Some campus leaders, who are responsible for implementing those cuts, say they haven't even seen the budget before the meeting. By the evening, it still hadn't been released publicly. That doesn't leave them much time to figure things out.
We have to have a budget July 1, right? Or everybody goes home or looks for another job.
The last item on the agenda was Witten's bonus. She got her last bonus for $175,000 in the fall, but after a $200,000 raise in the spring, her maximum allowable bonus increased to $225,000. Trustee Kathy Langham pitched the full amount in recognition, she says, of Witten's exemplary service.
By these measures, we concur it's been a successful year with notable accomplishments and a clear path to future progress and success.
Only one trustee voted no, graduate student Kyle Siebert.
We're facing significant financial challenges, and we've reduced benefits for employees. We're asking others to make cuts across the institution, and so that's where I struggle with this proposal. So for that reason, I'll be voting no.
Until the budget is released and university units take stock of the losses, it will be difficult to assess the full scope of the changes. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Ethan Sandweiss.
IU is also contending with cuts from the federal government that limit its ability to produce new research. Anyone who has looked for housing in downtown Bloomington knows it's not cheap. According to Realtor.com, the median listing price for a home, $665,000, and the average apartment cost is just under $2,500 a month. But as Isabella Vesperini reports, the city is looking for ways to eliminate barriers to diverse housing options downtown.
13 years ago, Beth and Jeff Smith decided to buy some land and design their own house, a 4,800 square foot house for themselves and their 2 kids.
Our daughter just graduated from IU, so she's moving to Tucson, Arizona, so she'll be out of state. Our son is a sophomore, rising junior, so and neither of them live in the house and haven't for a while, so it's just the 2 of us in the house.
They decided now is the time to downsize.
The reality is that it's also aging, and so there's a lot of upkeep and maintenance and repairs that are coming with it that I think we're thinking about, do we want to invest a lot more money here to update and modernize, or do we want to, downsize to a smaller place, more modern, newer, in a different location?
Beth and Jeff have looked online for smaller homes, but haven't found the right one.
The Goldilocks situation, I think for me, would be to have a house that's about 2,000 square feet, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, that's super modern, but doesn't share walls. I don't want to live in a condo. I want it to be extremely energy efficient.
The most important criterion is to be in the downtown area. What they found is either too expensive or too old.
Then you look at, what would you be giving up versus what you're gaining? And it just doesn't make sense to sell the house that we built, because it has all the things that we wanted, for something that would be maybe a compromise for what we already have.
What they want, the city doesn't have. That's because the city faces multiple barriers to providing housing for specific groups of people due to fair housing laws. These laws prohibit them from building housing based on demographics, such as age, sex, or race. This means they can't develop housing that targets a specific group, such as people like Beth and Jeff who are getting older and want to downsize.
Housing is an ecosystem. We need to look at everything altogether. You can't just target one without looking at everything.
There's also less movement in the market right now due to high prices and high interest rates, resulting in the golden handcuffs effect. Fewer people are buying homes, resulting in less demand.
We're locked right now. What we really need to do, and the only things that we can do, are influence the market.
One way to influence the market is to push out specific programs, such as down payment and closing cost assistance and rental deposits for low to moderate income households.
One of them is an interest rate buy down to encourage unlocking those golden handcuffs, because housing needs to appeal to everyone. There's not just one type of house that will be appropriate for every homeowner or tenant.
It's also hard to develop a variety of housing options due to land scarcity, zoning and planning restrictions, and high material and labor costs. These barriers can discourage developers, resulting in a lack of housing options. Influencing the market and attracting more developers could involve making changes to the city's Unified Development Ordinance, such as speeding up the permitting process. The longer it takes, the more expensive it gets.
It means that anyone could go out and be a developer if they knew that there was a finite amount of time that they're not on the hook waiting for their permit, right? So I think it will help influence affordability because we're getting more folks that can participate.
Beth and Jeff said they would consider building a new home downtown if the opportunity arose, but they know land is hard to come by. If possible, as they get older, they would prefer to be close to walking trails and amenities.
What I decided that I don't want to do is move further out into the county. I just don't want to be so far out that I'm away from the amenities of the city. I really love living close to things, and I don't want to have to commute and be far away from things.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Isabella Vesperini.
The city is spearheading projects such as the new Hopewell neighborhood on the former Bloomington Hospital site to provide more housing options and attract more people to town. Well, we're joined now by Clayton Baumgarth for more headlines from around the state. Hi, Clayton.
Hey, Joe. Indiana University Police Academy recruits have received training in deaf culture awareness and American Sign Language. The training consisted of a 2-hour panel discussion with IU ASL faculty on different elements of deaf culture, like how to interact and preferred modes of communication. Other training discussed tactical considerations such as handcuffing deaf or hard of hearing individuals in the front if it's safe, so their hands are available to communicate.
It opened my eyes to maybe a lot of ways that law enforcement maybe aren't serving their community in the best way, and how we can do better as a profession in that way, and how there's a need for this training.
Cox hopes to continue to expand and incorporate the training each year and be able to share it with other police academies and agencies throughout the state and nation. Every state agency already had 5% of its funding cut in the new state budget. But language in the budget bill also requires every state agency and public university to withhold an additional 5% of their funding for each of the next 2 fiscal years. And those holdbacks must come from salaries, wages, and operating expenses. State Budget Director Chad Ranney says agencies shouldn't expect to get that money back. Bloomington's National Guard Armory is more than halfway through an almost $10 million renovation. The update includes air conditioning, restrooms, classrooms, storage, and ADA-compliant training areas. There will also be spaces dedicated to recruiting and retention.
This will enhance the Indiana National Guard to complete their mission and for this unit to be successful and be ready for anything that is called upon.
The 87 soldiers that were stationed at the South Walnut Street location have been temporarily relocated to Camp Atterbury during the construction. Renovations are expected to be finished in January. Activists in northwest Indiana are concerned a seawall at NIPSCO's Michigan City coal plant could fail. They say that would send more coal ash from the site into Trail Creek and Lake Michigan, the water some residents in the region drink, swim in, and fish. NIPSCO is adding new steel sheets to the existing one and sealing the space between them to repair the wall.
We see this as more of this temporary Band-Aid to what ultimately could be, again, this imminent crisis at the plant if indeed there's a full-blown rupture.
Just Transition wants NIPSCO to test the water and sediment in Trail Creek throughout construction and at least a month after it's done. The utility says that isn't necessary. And finally, Bloomington is preparing for the arrival of spotted lanternflies, an invasive species capable of causing damage to the agriculture industry. The insects, which were spotted recently in nearby Bartholomew County, suck sap out of plants, and that can create mold and curb plant growth. The lanternfly's preferred tree is the trees of heaven, which is also an invasive species.
It's not like we can just cut it down and walk away. It takes a herbicide application usually to kill the roots. So pairing 2 invasives together is tough.
And Joe, the city recommends if you see the spotted lanternfly to take a photo of it and to kill it.
Yeah, and not to be confused with the firefly. That's a totally separate insect.
We like those.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Clayton. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. A Greensburg woman wrongly convicted of killing her 3-year-old son helps found the Indiana Innocence Project. And a pop-up museum in Indianapolis caters to exhibits of the city's quirky and weird underbelly. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
This is the moment that you've been waiting for.
On your marks, get set, go!
Discover extraordinary lost worlds.
I know scientists that would give their right arm for this.
This is heaven. Hope y'all ready.
Recently, WFIU and WTIU lost a combined $450,000 in state funding. This loss will directly impact the programming you rely on every day. The mission of public media has never been more vital or more vulnerable than right now. We're deeply committed to providing trusted programming to this region, and we're relying on our community now as much as ever. Help us meet this moment by becoming a sustaining member or increasing your monthly gift at WTIU.org/donate. Thank you.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Safe haven baby boxes allow people to anonymously surrender a newborn baby they are unable to care. There are almost 350 of them across the nation, and as Donnie Burgess reports, a second baby box location was unveiled in Bloomington Wednesday.
If you go to Bloomington Fire Station 2, you'll see a large black box inserted into the side of a brick wall. That is a baby box, which was unveiled Wednesday. The boxes allow those who cannot care for a newborn to place the baby in a secure, temperature-controlled, ventilated box, usually at fire and police stations. Once a baby is placed inside and the door is closed, it automatically locks and alerts emergency services.
I think it's just another example of how our department serves the community, whether it's making 911 calls, whether it's MIH's taking care of extended care, or now it's having a box here that somebody who we may not even know may have an opportunity to drop off a little one that we then can take care of.
People who surrender their newborns are kept anonymous and protected from legal consequences per Indiana's safe haven law. While you may not agree with someone choosing this path, supporters say it gives a child a greater chance of surviving and thriving.
If it's a safe journey for the mom and the child, we all should be thankful that this is what she did choose, because we've seen the stories across America where babies haven't made it.
The installation is funded by a $10,000 grant from the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. Bloomington's original baby box at Fire Station 1 reopened this week after flooding in 2021 closed it.
We are creating a resource for parents in their most difficult moments to ensure that their children have the best possible paths in life.
Fire Station 2's baby box is the 345th in the United States. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Donnie Burgess.
Almost 30 years ago, a Greensburg woman was convicted of killing her child. After 17 years in prison, new evidence proved her innocence and she was released. Today, she's one of the founding board members of the Indiana Innocence Project. George Hale has more on her story and the resources at Indiana University the project is tapping into.
On June 30th, 1995, Christine Bunch woke up to find her Greensburg home on fire. A wall of flames prevented her from reaching her 3-year-old son Tony's bedroom.
And so I ran outside screaming for help, and I picked up his tricycle and I busted out the window and I tried to climb through to get to him.
Neighbors pulled her back from the home and told her to wait for first responders.
I waited in the ambulance thinking that everything was going to be okay. They were there, they would get him, and it was going to be all right. I can still feel the panic. My heart goes faster. I can still remember the smell and the taste of it. And this fear that you're not going to be able to get in there and help.
Medics pronounced the toddler dead at the scene and transported Bunch to hospital where she was treated for cuts, burns, and smoke inhalation. Investigators told her that they believed the fire had been set intentionally.
Officers came in and told me after 2 hours that they had determined it was an arson. It couldn't have been anything but that. And I believed them.
They also believed Bunch was the one who set the fire. They charged her with murder.
It's just horrific. Well, police and prosecutors don't see her as a grieving mom. They immediately see her as a killer, as someone who didn't want to be a mom.
Key to the prosecution was evidence they presented that the fire had 2 points of origin within the home, one of them in Tony's bedroom.
I mean, what's more powerful evidence than that?
They convinced a jury to sentence Bunch to 60 years for the murder of her only child.
But she never set the fire, and she didn't kill her son.
16 years later, new defense attorneys discovered documentation showing prosecutors knew the fire likely didn't start in the bedroom, and what they relied on as evidence of diesel fuel was probably from a kerosene heater previously used in the home.
All of this evidence that shows Christine is innocent was never presented. Christine never knew about it. And she was wrongfully convicted.
Christine walked out of prison after 17 years. She's now been exonerated. Bunch and Beatty are founding board members of the Indiana Innocence Project, which formally launched last summer. A year later, the group is hiring attorneys and tapping into resources at the Maurer School of Law and IU's criminology department. Last year, 2023 IU grad Mackenzie Lewis helped set up the intake system for the project under supervision from criminology professor Marla Sandys.
And that's when we started receiving or accepting applications. I think as word of mouth has gotten out, as we've started sending letters into the prisons, I think people are starting to hear about it and writing in more. We have an online application on our website, indianainnocenceproject.org. And a lot of the times, family or friends will fill out the application on behalf of the incarcerated individual because obviously they don't have a lot of internet access, if any. And then we also have a physical application. If someone writes in a letter, I'll send them a copy of our physical application in the mail, and they'll send it back. Or a family member will call and let us know that they want an application, or they'll call themselves and we'll send it to them.
Volunteers with relevant backgrounds review the cases and make recommendations. Then they go to former Philadelphia prosecutor Joshua Barnett for review. He's the first legal counsel for the Indiana Innocence Project.
I do think my experience as a prosecutor, both just prosecuting, your everyday street crime and then prosecuting police misconduct, I do feel like it's really equipped me well to look at like what the prosecution has and analyze it from their perspective. And it's not all on prosecutors and cops either. A lot of the things we look at are what defense attorneys did wrong. They may have, let in evidence that they should have objected to, or not hired an expert when they should have, or just, not listened to their client.
Barnett says there isn't always the smoking gun like in Bunch's case, and prosecutors generally aren't trying to frame innocent people.
There usually has to be a lot that goes wrong. All those things go wrong because if someone really is innocent and it's like one or two things, they're likely not going to be convicted, because criminal cases are messy and oftentimes, small violations happen that don't necessarily make or break the case, but when someone's innocent and all these things, form this perfect storm, it leads to a wrongful conviction.
It's easy for somebody to sit on the sidelines that has never been involved with the criminal justice system and say, these kind of things don't happen. They do happen. They happen often. And there are people out there that are begging for help, and we need to be able to help them. So that's primary mission.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm George Hale.
If you know of someone who feels they've been wrongly convicted of a crime, you can reach out to the Innocence Project on their website, indianainnocenceproject.org. Former Indianapolis Star reporter Will Higgins found his niche in the quirky side of history during his journalism career. Now he's created a pop-up exhibit containing 17 stories of compelling individuals and unusual incidents from Indianapolis. Natalie Fitzgibbons has the story of the exhibit called The Museum of Fabulosity.
Some may recognize Indianapolis as the racing capital of the world, or with the NBA Finals home to the Indiana Pacers. But regardless of the acclaim sports has brought to the city, one thing Indianapolis isn't widely known as is weird. The Museum of Fabulosity seeks to reveal that side of the city.
The quirky, freaky side of Indianapolis has been swept under the rug.
The museum opened June 6th and is open until July 20th. It is located at the Guy Clark Gallery, Tube Factory Art Space in Indianapolis. All the stories in the exhibit Higgins researched and wrote himself, though not all the artifacts are the real ones. The point of the exhibit is to reveal and share 17 peculiar stories.
What you see here is the history of Indianapolis from around 1904 until 2000. The history of Indianapolis that you won't see anywhere else. It is certainly not in the history books. It's not being taught anywhere. It's the weird side of this city.
Visitors can find the story of Morris Lynn Johnson, who robbed at least 36 banks and escaped prison 3 times. There's also Alfreda Mays, named the world's championship lady driver, who was known for the daredevil act of wing walking on airplanes and for driving a race car through a flaming wall made of wood.
But the idea of a woman back in the 1930s choosing adventure over security, I think is cool and should be celebrated.
Higgins has been visiting museums all his life, and his love for them went into creating the Museum of Fabulosity. His belief: the smaller, the stranger, and more random the museum, the better it is. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Natalie Fitzgibbons.
That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maurer Grosvenor Plummer Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Maurer Grosvenor Plummer Attorneys, understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis, on the web at lawngp.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger & Robertson, attorneys at law since 1949, utilizing experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.